I wrote it like a confession because that's how it felt. Like I was finally saying something out loud that I'd been whispering to myself for years. It was a Tuesday night, the kind where Chicago winter makes the windows sweat and the radiators hiss like they're gossiping, and I was sitting cross legged on my couch with my phone lighting up my face in that blue aquarium glow. The dating app prompt blinked at me. What are you looking for? And my thumb hovered like it was afraid of the truth. I'd been on enough first dates to know the script, the job questions, the travel bragging, the careful admissions, delivered like they were fragile glass. I'd learned to smile and keep things light because the moment I tried to say what actually tugged at me, what I actually found beautiful, people heard something else, a kink, a punchline, a phase. I didn't have the language for it at first, just a steady, undeniable attraction to men who weren't afraid of softness, men who could hold masculinity loosely, like a coat they could take off when they got home. It started back in college, watching a guy at a party put on eyeliner with the casual focus of someone tying a shoelace, then laugh when a friend called him pretty. It wasn't the eyeliner that got me, it was the lack of apology, the ease, the permission. And then the years happened, and I learned to keep that part quiet. Not because I was ashamed exactly, more because I got tired of being treated like a curiosity, or worse, like I'd said something dirty when I meant something tender. So I dated men who looked correct on paper, men who talked about traditional values as if they were describing furniture, men who wanted me to be the only soft thing in the room. That night, I was tired of correct. I typed, deleted, typed again. My heart thudded with the ridiculous adrenaline of a teenager about to press send on a risky text. Then I wrote it plainly, like I was setting a glass of water on the table. Kindness wins. Big fan of men who play with gender. If you're a crossdresser, welcome. I stared at it until my eyes went dry. It looked so simple, sitting there in black letters, like it had always been allowed. I hit save and tossed my phone onto the cushion like it might bite me. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. I made tea. I listened to my upstairs neighbor's muffled footsteps and the wind worrying the balcony door. I told myself it was fine. It was just a sentence. It was just honesty. Then my phone started buzzing. At first, it was one notification, then two, then three, little electric taps that made my stomach flip. I picked it up and watched the number in the corner climb. Messages, likes, replies, so many that the app started stacking them like it couldn't fit the flood. I sat there blinking, half thrilled, half horrified, as if I'd opened a door and found a crowd waiting on the other side. The first message was from someone named Leo with a profile picture of him in a gym mirror. OMG, thank you, he wrote, followed by 3 crying emojis and a heart. I've never seen anyone say that outright. The second was from Cal, whose profile was all hiking photos and craft beer. I'm nervous to say this, he wrote, but I have a drawer, dresses, nothing fancy. I just like how it feels. Is that what you mean? Then Mark, 41, who opened with, I'm married. She doesn't know. I need discretion. No hello, no softness, just that sharp little sentence like a lock clicking shut. I kept scrolling. More variations of the same theme, each one a different kind of human. Some were sweet in a way that made my throat tighten. I thought I was the only one said. I've been hiding since I was 13, another confessed, and I pictured a kid with shaking hands folding fabric back into secrecy. Some were flirtatious, eager to perform. I've got heels taller than your ex, someone boasted, and I rolled my eyes and smiled anyway. Some were terrified, words stumbling like they'd never been spoken before. I don't know if I'm allowed to call myself that, wrote a guy named Jonah. I don't wear makeup, just sometimes I want to. I'm sorry if that's not enough. There were married men, too many married men, each message carrying that same request like a coin pressed into my palm. Keep me safe, keep me secret, make this easy. My chest hardened every time. I felt bad and angry at once, which is an emotion I've always struggled to hold. I'd grown up learning to accommodate, to smooth things over, to keep the peace, but this wasn't peace. This was someone else's mess being slid across the table. I wrote back to a few with kindness I genuinely meant. I'm glad you reached out. You don't have to apologize. Yes, that's what I mean. I asked questions that felt human instead of clinical. What makes you feel like yourself? What part scares you? What part feels like relief? And to the married men, I wrote something I'd rehearsed in my head 100 times. I'm not comfortable being someone's secret. If you're in an open relationship with informed consent, that's different, but I won't be part of cheating. One man replied immediately, furious. You put this in your profile. What did you expect? Another sent a single thumbs down like I'd failed a customer service interaction. One wrote, fair, and I swear I could hear the weight in that one syllable. As the night went on, the messages kept coming. My phone grew warm in my hands. I started to feel like I was standing in the middle of an open field with a flare lit above my head, and people were running toward it from the dark. The thing was, I understood why. I understood what it meant to see one sentence and suddenly feel less alone. But I also felt overwhelmed, like I'd accidentally become a lighthouse and now ships were crashing into my shore. I shut the app and pressed my palms to my eyes. My tea had gone cold. The room felt too quiet around the hum of my thoughts. I'd wanted to find someone, not become an emergency exit. The next morning, I opened the app again while waiting for my coffee to brew. Overnight, the count had doubled. My inbox was a jumble of fear and hope, glamour and grief. I took a slow sip, bracing myself, and started sorting like my heart was an overworked librarian. Then I saw a message that didn't sparkle. It didn't perform. It didn't ask for anything. It was from someone named Phil. His profile picture was ordinary in the most disarming way. Soft brown eyes, a slightly crooked smile, a scarf pulled up against the cold. No gym mirror, no nightclub lighting, just a guy standing in what looked like a park, cheeks pink from winter. His message was 4 words. "Thank you for saying this." I read it once, then again. It landed with a quiet weight, like a hand resting on a shoulder. I clicked his profile. He had 3 photos, one of him holding a mug in a sunlit kitchen, one of him at a bookshop with his head tilted like he was listening to the shelves, and one of him in a plain black sweater laughing mid-sentence. His bio was brief. Teacher, introvert. I like thrift stores, bad puns, and people who mean what they say. No mention of cross-dressing, no coy hints, no discretion language. Just that one sentence in my inbox like a note slid under a door. I typed back before I could overthink it. "You're welcome. I meant it." How did it feel to see it? A few hours passed. I went to work, answered emails, pretended to be a functional adult while my phone sat face down on my desk like a secret. When it finally buzzed, my pulse jumped in the stupidest, sweetest way. He wrote, "Like I could breathe. I didn't realize how tight I've been holding myself. I don't even know what I'm looking for yet, but I wanted you to know it mattered." I stared at that line, "how tight I've been holding myself," and I felt something in my chest soften in answer. Not attraction exactly, not yet. More like recognition, like hearing a note that matched the pitch inside me. We messaged that evening, slow, careful conversations that didn't feel like auditions. He asked me about my week. I asked about his students. He told me one of them had tried to convince him that Pluto was grounded. I laughed out loud on my couch, alone, and it startled me because it wasn't the performative laugh I used on dates. It was the one that bursts out when you actually feel safe. After a few days, I asked directly, "Do you cross-dress?" His reply took longer this time. When it came, it was honest in a way that made my stomach flip, like stepping onto a frozen lake and hearing it groan. "I don't know what word I deserve," he wrote. "I have. Not often. Alone. It started with my mom's cardigan when I was a kid. Then I got older and told myself to stop being weird. But sometimes I miss it like you miss music after it's been quiet too long." I could see him typing that with careful fingers as if each word might shatter something. I wrote back, "You deserve gentleness. That's the word." Then, because I wanted to be clear, I added, "Also, you don't owe me anything. I'm not here to collect your secret. I'm here to know you, at whatever pace you want." His answer was immediate. "I've never had anyone say that." We agreed to meet for coffee on Saturday afternoon at a place I liked because the lighting was warm and the barista didn't treat customers like an inconvenience. I got there early, chose a table near the window, and watched people pass outside, bundled in coats, moving like hurried punctuation marks in the cold. When Phil walked in, I recognized him instantly, even without the app's curated framing. He was taller than I expected, shoulders slightly hunched like he was trying not to take up space. He scanned the room, found me, and his face opened into that same crooked smile from the photos. "Hi," he said, and his voice was quieter than I imagined, not weak, just gentle, like he didn't want to disturb the air. "Hi," I said back, and it felt like setting down a weight. We ordered coffee and sat. At first, we did the usual. "Where are you from? What do you teach? How long have you lived here?" But it didn't feel like a script. It felt like we were building a small bridge plank by plank. Halfway through, he took a breath that made his shoulders lift, then settle. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and meant it as an invitation, not a demand. "I almost didn't message you," he admitted. "I wrote 3 drafts. They all sounded wrong, like I was trying to convince you I wasn't scary." That made my throat tighten. "You're not scary," I said. He looked down at his hands. His nails were short, clean, ordinary. There was something heartbreakingly careful about them. "I know, but I've been treated like I am, or like I'm a joke, or like I'm a problem someone has to solve." I felt the urge to reach across the table, to touch his hand, but I didn't. Consent isn't just about bodies, it's about space, too. So I stayed with him in words. I'm not trying to solve you, I said. I'm trying to see you. He looked up then, and his eyes were bright in a way that felt like it hurt. Thank you, he whispered, like the words were a prayer. We talked for 2 hours about his fear of being found out, about my exhaustion with dating games, about how identity can feel like a room you keep rearranging until you can finally sit down. He told me he had a small bag in the back of his closet, nothing dramatic, just a skirt, a soft sweater, a pair of tights. Sometimes I put them on and just clean my apartment, he said, embarrassed. Like the mundane stuff feels different, like I'm allowed to be tender while I'm folding laundry. I laughed softly, not at him, but with him. That sounds kind of perfect, I said. Tender laundry. He smiled, relieved. Outside, the sky turned that early winter gray, and the window glass reflected our faces faintly, like we were two versions of ourselves meeting in the middle. When we finally stood to leave, he hesitated near the door. Is it okay if I hug you? He asked. The question alone did something to me. The care, the respect, the way he didn't assume access. Yes, I said, and stepped in. His arms wrapped around me, warm and steady, not possessive, just present. I inhaled the clean scent of soap and cold air clinging to his scarf, and for a second I thought, this is what I wanted. Not the spectacle, not the flood, not the performance. Just this. A person who knows what it is to be afraid and chooses softness anyway. After that, we kept seeing each other. Slow dates, museum afternoons where we lingered in front of paintings and made up stories about the people inside them, grocery store runs that turned into debates about which pasta shape was superior, walks along the lake when the wind slapped our cheeks red and we laughed like kids. One evening, weeks in, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. No pressure, he said, and I loved him a little for saying it that way. He cooked something simple, stir fry, too much garlic, the kind of meal that tastes better because it's made with intention. After we ate, he stood in the doorway of his bedroom like someone about to step onto a stage. I want to show you, he said quietly. Only if you still want to see. My heart kicked. I want to, I said, and you can stop any time. He disappeared into the room. I sat on the couch, hands folded, feeling the gravity of trust settling into the air. When he came back out, it wasn't dramatic, no wig, no heavy makeup, just a soft, oversized sweater in a muted berry color, a simple dark skirt, tights. His hair was the same, his face was the same, but his posture had changed. His shoulders were lower, his breath fuller, like his body had been waiting for permission to unclench. He looked at me with that same nervous brightness. Is it okay? He asked. I swallowed around the sudden ache in my throat. You look like you, I said honestly, like you just turned the volume up on your gentleness. He exhaled, one long shaking release, and his eyes went wet. He sat beside me, leaving a respectful space, and I turned toward him slowly, giving him time to choose. I didn't think anyone would ever see this and not leave, he whispered. I leaned in and pressed my forehead to his, a touch that felt like a promise without demanding anything. I'm not here for the costume, I said. I'm here for the courage. He laughed softly, half sob, half relief. I'm still learning, he said. Me too, I admitted. I thought putting that line in my profile would make dating easier. Instead, it made everything louder. He nodded, understanding without needing details. Sometimes loud is just people desperate to be heard, he said. That sentence stayed with me. It made me look back at the flood differently. All those messages, sweet, nervous, married, secretive, weren't just about me. They were about the hunger to be seen as human. Phil didn't flood me. He didn't demand. He didn't perform. He simply showed up with gratitude and honesty, like he'd been carrying himself carefully through a world that kept asking him to be smaller. Later, when we walked to the corner store for ice cream, him in jeans again because that was what felt safest outside, he slipped his hand into mine and squeezed once, like punctuation. The night air smelled like snow and streetlights. My cheeks were cold. My heart was warm in a way I hadn't expected from a dating app. On the way back, he looked at me and said, I'm glad you said it. I squeezed his hand back. I'm glad you heard it, I replied. And I realized something that made me laugh softly into the dark. I hadn't just put an invitation in my profile for crossdressers. I'd put an invitation in for honesty, for softness. For people who had been holding their breath, the flood was real, the chaos was real. But the quietest message, the one that didn't ask for anything but still offered everything, was the one that led me home to a version of love I could actually live in.